Hey guys, this is Doug again with Fellowship of the Martyrs, coming to you from Liberty, Missouri, just outside of Kansas City. Want to do a video. I'm kind of in the Old Testament now because I just did a video about 1 Samuel 25 and Abigail and Nabal and David. And I just got to reading some more and kind of felt inspired to do this video about taking the Ark into Jerusalem. This has been a theme around here for years, and I want to just cover this because it is something that people are coming at me about right now. I really enjoy Judges, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Samuel. They are some of the really great stories, little snippets of stories. So if you're not reading the Bible as much as you should, or if you don't know where to start, or you just don't find it interesting or something, there is some really cool stuff in there, from Judges to 1st and 2nd Samuel. All of that stuff there, talking about Israel and how they beat down all their enemies, and the angel of the Lord killed 135,000 guys, and then they fell away and worshipped idols again. And then God would raise up somebody around the year of Jubilee, or every 40 years, 50 years, and free them, and they'd live at peace with God for 40 years, one generation. And then they'd fall away again, over and over, back and forth. You kind of want to smack your head and go, man, these guys are just idiots. But then you look at America and realize every 50 years or so we've had a revival and a jubilee, and God's freed the captives because we're back in darkness again, and we're doing the exact same thing that the nation of Israel did for the last 300 some years. So anyway, I'm going to read to you from 2 Samuel chapter 6 and talk a little bit about the lessons that we can learn from this and the application to me personally right now, and maybe to you as well. Now, David has just conquered Jerusalem, is rebuilding the city, and is going to make that his capital. He's been anointed as the king of the combined Judah and Israel, the southern and the northern kingdoms, which is, anyway, so all the tribes are recognizing David as their king. He's moving into Jerusalem, and he's decided to go get the Ark of the Covenant and move it into Jerusalem. 2 Samuel 6, verse 1. Now David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. Now this is, I'm reading out of the NASB, New American Standard Bible, just so you know. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him to Baal-Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is called by the name, the very name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned above the cherubim. They placed the Ark of God on a new cart that they might bring it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were leading the new cart. Okay, now right away there's a problem. God was very clear that the Ark of the Covenant was to be built with rings on the sides, and they were to have long poles, and only the Levites were to carry it on these poles, and nobody was to touch the actual Ark. They'd feed these poles into the rings, pick it up and carry it, but nobody was to touch the Ark. Okay, now right away he's trying to hurry things along by loading it on a cart. We're just going to put it on an ox cart, haul it into Jerusalem, no big deal. Not showing proper reverence for the Ark of the Covenant, not showing proper respect for the law of God, and something bad's going to happen. Verse 4, so they brought it with the Ark of God from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Ahio was walking ahead of the Ark. Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, and with lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. So they're out front, marching along, rejoicing. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen nearly upset it. The King James says the ox stumbled. Okay, so get the picture here. The threshing floor of Nakan is just a place marker on the map to tell you where it happened. But the ox stumbled, the cart jiggles, it looks like the ark's going to jump off the cart. So Uzzah grabs it to steady it, and all bad. And the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down there for his irreverence, and he died there by the ark of God. David became angry because of the Lord's outburst against Uzzah, and that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day, which really literally means the Lord broke through a breakthrough. David was unwilling to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David with him, but David took it aside to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Oh, I missed a verse there. So David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?" And David was unwilling to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David with him. David took it to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Thus the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household. Now it was told King David, saying, "The Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him on account of the ark of God." So, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't be afraid of it. Maybe it is kind of a good thing. David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom into the city of David with gladness. And so it was that when the bearers of the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed an ox and a fatling. Okay, it's not on a cart now. Now it's being carried the way it was supposed to, with bearers, with the thingy, with the long pole, through there, and every time they'd take 6 paces, he would kill an ox and a fatling. Well, I don't know how many paces it is from Obed-Edom's house to Jerusalem, but that's probably a lot of oxes and stuff. David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. Okay, basically in his underwear. So David and all the house of Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouting and the sound of the trumpet. Then it happened, as the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, that McCall, the daughter of Saul, looked out of the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. Now, McCall, remember, is the daughter of Saul, who was originally promised to David if he'd go get 100 Philistine foreskins, and then when Saul turned against him and he took off, Saul gave her to somebody else. After Saul died, David demands his wife back. So the guy that she had married, Abner, says, "Get away, go home, never mind," and gives McCall back to David, because that's where she should have been in the first place, and that was promised to her. So they didn't divorce him or nothing. They just told the other guy, who cries and follows him along, and Abner, the general, says, "Dude, go home." No indication there's a bill of divorcement or nothing. They just give her back to David because he rightfully he had rights to her in the beginning, and she was promised to him, and they were married, and then took it away. Anyway, so another example of a marriage completely rearranged. And but she's still the daughter of Saul. Saul was against David, and McCall has some beef against David, but she sees him leaping and dancing before the Lord in his underwear. Everybody watching, the king, who doesn't look very dignified, who's out there spinning and twirling and worshiping the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. Verse 17, so they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent which David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. When David had finished offering the burnt offering and the peace offering, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. Further, he distributed to all the people, this is assuming the number at the beginning, the 30,000 that had gathered, I suppose. I mean, it says all the people of Israel, but I think it's talking about those dignitaries or whoever had been gathered. Further, he distributed to all the people, to all the multitude of Israel, both to men and women, a cake of bread and one of dates and one of raisins to each one. Then all the people departed to his house. But when David returned to bless his household, McCall, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, "How the king of Israel distinguished himself today. He uncovered himself today in the eyes of his servants' maids, as one of the foolish ones shamelessly uncovers himself." So she's like, "You look like a jerk. You look like a fool out there dancing around shamelessly in front of other people's maids, in front of your servants' maids." So David said to McCall, "It was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord, over Israel. Therefore I will celebrate before the Lord. I will be more lightly esteemed than this, and will be humble in my own eyes. I'll do even more like this. But with the maids of whom you have spoken, with them I will be distinguished." He says, they like me. You may think I'm nothing, but the people love me. McCall, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Now, that may have been because she despised him and he didn't think much of her, so he didn't know her, and get her pregnant. Or it may be that the Lord just sealed up her womb and wanted no more descendants from Saul's line, period. But clearly, there were consequences for her complaining against David. Whether supernatural or natural is not clear. Now, as this relates to me and potentially to you, there are people that give me trouble because they think that I should grab the wheel and steer this ministry or these houses or whatever the direction I want it to go. And I have been trained by God to keep my hands off the wheel. In fact, back in 2005, when we were praying for liberty, for the lampstand of liberty to light, we circled the town 7 times on 7 Sundays. And on the 7th Sunday, October 31st, 2005, I'm circling the town, I miss my exit, and I'm coming down 435, you can look on a map. I'm coming down I-435, which is the beltway around town, headed south. And instead of going 210 east to circle the town, I actually go over the Missouri River. And as soon as I realize I've done it, I get off at the next exit, which is Front Street, go under the highway to head back, and the Lord says, go straight. So I go straight, and the sister that's with me, we dead end within a block into the Kansas City Power and Light, big coal burning, electric generating power station, with big smokestack and everything. And we're just sitting there. I'm like, what are we doing, Lord? Wait. So we sit there for like 5 minutes. I don't know what we're doing. We're just kind of praying and looking at this big power station. And then the Lord says, okay, you can go now. Okay, whatever. So go back down Front Street, get back on 435. As soon as we cross the Missouri River, we're going across the bridge, I hear, my eye has moved north of the river. The Ark of the Covenant has moved north of the river. I'm like, did you just hear that? My eye has moved north of the river. The Ark of the Covenant has moved north of the river. That's what I heard. The heck are you talking about, Lord? So we go on and we circle the town. The Lord gives me a verse. It says, his eye ranges to and fro, looking for those who will obey. And I understand that there's a lot of promises about Kansas City. And I believe that he found a critical mass of obedience greater in the Northland than on the south side of Kansas City. And so his eye was attracted to where there was more obedience and sacrifice and willingness. Anyway, okay. So I'm like, what do you mean the Ark of the Covenant has moved north of the river? And he said, well, that is my presence. That is the fire of my presence. That is the weapon that goes out in front of you. That is the presence and mercy and power of the Lord. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Thanks, Lord. Later that night, in a fulfillment of a bunch of different people's prophecies, although they didn't know what they were prophesying or exactly how, including Chuck Pierce on the Elijah list, had a prophecy that on October 31st, 2005, a cloud would show up over the Midwest. and it would spread to the north and the south and the east and the west, that it would obscure the sun. He believed that it would be an actual cloud in the stratosphere, that it would obscure the sun, cause famine, and crops wouldn't grow, and bring revival. And nothing like that actually showed up in the natural. And of course, he didn't apologize and say he was wrong and a false prophet. But he did hear, and 2 other people called me with prophecies where they had specifically heard October 31st, 2005, that a cloud would show up in the Midwest, spread to the north and the south and the east and the west, and bring revival. And the other 2, one of them my great uncle, they didn't interpret it or add to it the way Chuck Pierce did, and try and put some application on it. They just reported what the Lord told them. But later that day, on Halloween, on a new moon, the darkest day of the year, the Lord was clear with me that He lit the lampstand of liberty. That every city in America had lost their lampstand, had lost their first love. We've been praying and crying and begging and pleading and feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and doing all the stuff in Isaiah 58. And He had promised that He was going to restore the lampstand, and not to worry about everywhere else, just to worry about your own little town. And on October 31st, 2005, I believe that the Lord lit the lampstand, restored the lampstand, however it works, of Liberty, Missouri. And a fire started burning, and the incense of that altar, the smoke of that altar started rising. And a year later, He sent me to the south and the north and the east and the west to pray for other cities, to light other lampstands, to find other people that were out there doing the will of the Lord. And the cloud of the smoke that from that one lampstand that started in the middle began to spread to the north, the south, and east and the west. It didn't happen as fast as people wanted to believe, but it is going to bring revival. It is going to change the understanding and worship of God and the nature of church as we know it. And I continue to believe and stand on His promises. Now, so my belief is that what God is doing in Liberty is really important. I'm not saying that it's the only place where there is an Ark of the Covenant, where His presence abides, or where His protection rests. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying there's only one. I understand that it is sort of a poetic, metaphysical, whatever thing. Just like He can call lots of people Samson or David or whatever. He can have lots of people that are the defenders of God's people, and He calls them Michael. There's several times the Lord's had me go to somebody and say, "You are like Michael," or the Lord calls you Michael, because you are the defender of God's people. That doesn't mean there's only one. Anyway, or that they're actually an angel in disguise or whatever. Anyway, so people want me to grab a hold of the wheel and twist it the way they think it ought to go. They don't like the way things are going. They think, well, there's sin in the camp, or you're too soft on this person, or you need to throw out that guy, or why can't you see that he's a warlock or she's a witch or whatever. Yeah, no, I got that right away when they got here, and the Lord's telling me to love them, and whatever. I've even had people tell me that I should throw somebody out because they have demons. And I'm like, our battle's not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. If they got demons, why don't you get the demons off of them instead of physically tossing them out and taking it out on the person? Anyway, all that I've heard is, don't touch the ark. Now, first of all, they were trying to hurry things along by putting it on a cart, which is a anytime in a dream or whatever you see a vehicle, a car, a motorcycle, a bus, or whatever, it typically is some kind of reference to a ministry, to a vehicle that's being used to accomplish something. And in this example, I think using a cart to hurry along the Ark of the Covenant is symbolic of what much of churchianity and much of what apostolic, prophetic, whatever, IHOP type places are trying to hurry along and get the ark where they want it to go faster. But invariably, the ox will trip and somebody will try to steady the ark and think they're doing God a favor, and he will flash with fire and kill them where they stand. It says, the Lord burst forth upon him, struck him down for his irreverence, and he died there by the ark of God. I know a lot of people that are dead and may not even know they're dead for their irreverence and trying to reach out and steady the ark when they should have left it alone, and they should have never had it on a cart in the first place. So David is all upset, but it wasn't David that got killed, because God couldn't kill David. David's the king that's anointed. Okay, God's not going to have him be the one, but he's got to teach David this lesson. You don't treat this way. You don't put it on a cart. You don't touch it. You got to have more fear of the Lord. But God's not going to kill David, because David's the anointed king and the stump of Jesse, and Jesus has to come out of his line and all this other stuff. So this poor kid Uzzah, who's just trying to help, who's thinking he's doing the right thing, but it wasn't his idea to put it on the ox cart. It was probably David's. And David is upset because he got this guy killed by his irreverence and lack of obedience to the word of God. So he's scared of the ark now, which is good. That was the plan. So they leave it with Obed-Edom, and Obed-Edom gets blessed. Now David's like, okay, well, it's a blessing and a fearful thing. Okay, so if we're just really careful and we do it right, maybe it'll be okay. Good answer. So then they get the bearers of the ark like they're supposed to. They walk with it, take their time. Every 6 paces, they sacrifice an ox and a fatling calf, a fatling goat, and or calf. It doesn't say. I'm not clear. And that may take a long time. And he dances before the Lord and worships and praises, and they bring the ark into Jerusalem. Later on, Solomon builds a house, builds the temple, and the ark goes into the temple, and the presence of the Lord dwells in the temple, and the cloud and fire and the whole deal. Anyway, David had to learn more respect for the ark, so it kind of had to go this way. And in the Lord's eyes, these are kind of acceptable losses for the need for more fear of the Lord and more respect for the ark, especially from David. And I'm not sure he passed that fear of the Lord and respect down to Solomon as much as he should have. Solomon makes it about him a lot. But the point is, I am scared to death of trying to steady the ark. There are people that look and go, oh, it's going to fall, it's going to fall, you need to do something, you need to steady it, you need to reach out and touch it and hold it up. And I'm like, no, sirree, Bob. If it falls, but I ain't touching it. And that's the only safe place. And I would encourage you in whatever ministry the Lord has you doing, if it's His ministry, you don't need to steady the ark. The ox tripped because he wanted it to. It only looks like it's going to fall off the cart, but it's going to be okay. He's got angels around it. He don't need you to steady things and get it to look the way you want it to look. The first thing you ought to do, if the ark looks like it's about to fall, is figure out why it's on a cart and not being carried the way it was supposed to be, where you had maybe 10, 12 guys carrying it or more, and there was no chance it was going to stumble and fall. The Lord had a plan for them to carry it safely with lots of redundant backups instead of one ox in one cart with one guy to catch it. Lots of spirals there. Lots of good reasons. Yeah, lots of sermons in that. Now, at the end we also see King David doing it the right way, worshiping the Lord, thanking Him, praising. It looks like he's in his underwear. It looks like he's naked before the people and foolish. Doesn't look particularly kingly. Doesn't look particularly fearsome. And but everybody's rejoicing with him, and the people love him, and they see he's real. He's real. His heart is out on his sleeve, and everybody can see it. And his wife, who wants to be a queen and wants to look dignified and grew up in the court of Saul with, whatever, This is not distinguished. This does not look the way it should. You look shameful and foolish. And she never reproduces. That kind of spirit, the Lord will seal its womb. A mocking, critical spirit like that of her husband, who didn't kill her, even though she's Saul's kin and everything else, and he wiped out a lot of the rest of Saul's house. Yeah, you know, it's a lack of appreciation, a lack of respect for him, a lack of respect for his office, all kinds of stuff. And God closes her womb, and she does not reproduce. I find that to typically be the case with the enemies of the Lord, that as critical as they are, they don't really reproduce much. They'll spread that same spirit around some, but they don't bear good fruit. Anyway, I guess in conclusion, whatever it is that your ministry is, make sure that it's moving along the way the Lord wants, and it may be at a snail's pace, 6 steps at a time, and you're like, dude, we could so like UPS this and save a lot of time. FedEx this overnight and get this going. No, you can't. You can't. Something will happen. God will make sure that something happens. The ox will stumble, the cart will wiggle, and somebody will reach up and try to steady it and get themselves blasted. God will do that. The right thing is reverence, fear of the Lord, and a willingness to do it in His time, His way, according to His instruction, not your shortcuts. The idea of getting lots of people together to pray and cry out to the Lord so we can hurry His coming is idiocy. It is nonsense, and it is a good way to prove that you do not have patience, long-suffering, and the kind of fruits of the Spirit that are going to be necessary to endure what's coming. That's all for now. Hope this blesses you somehow and sinks in. And to those that keep telling me to try to reach out and steady the ark, no chance. No chance. If it's not moving fast enough for you, then you need to pray for patience. But we're going to do it 6 steps at a time and take however long the Lord takes. And no way, no how are you getting me to reach out and steady the ark. I know that voice, and that is not my God. Thanks for listening. Lots more at fellowshipofthemartyrs.com.